5 minutes early, I entered the rooftop restaurant, my shoes clicking against the city and the shiny marble floor. The air smelled of pricey wine and roasted herbs. The skyline gleamed below like a promise I had long since given up on. Yet there was a sharpness to it all, as if the setting was too ideal for you to actually unwind. I changed how I felt. She texted me. Tonight was supposed to be special, our 5th anniversary, and I felt the weight of the evening settle deep in my chest. Meet me at the Pinnacle, 7 p.m., dress sharp, big. That was all she'd written yesterday. Cryptic, a surprise. I had been thinking about what she meant all day. Perhaps a quiet table by the window, maybe a real talk, the kind we hadn't had in months. Perhaps she would gaze at me as she used to when we were younger, before the long silences and the space between us grew too familiar. Even if it felt like chasing a shadow, I wanted to believe in that hope. I followed the hostess, a young woman with a polished grin, to a large table covered in white linen. It was already full of faces. Her parents were there. I hadn't expected that. This was supposed to be intimate. My gut constricted. Her cousin lounged back in their chair, smiling with the kind of ease that felt rehearsed. I noticed her at the far end, laughing, a smile on his face as if he knew something I didn't. A group of people I barely recognized. She had her hair swept back, reflecting the silver of her dress. She looked invincible. And I stood there, hands in my pockets, unsure whether to wave or wait for her to notice me. The table was set, but she didn't make me feel like a guest. Not right away. I hovered on the edge of her orbit. After at least 20 seconds of uncertainty, I took the leather seat in the corner, between her cousin and an empty chair. I tried to brush off the uneasiness as the restaurant hummed with conversation and clinking glasses. The cushion squeaked beneath me. Servers moved through with trays of appetizers. I looked around, observing the details, flickering flames, light reflecting off glass walls and gold-rimmed plates. It was beautiful, but cold. Her cousin leaned toward me, breath heavy with liquor. "You clean up nice, man," he said, as if setting the stage for someone else's story. "I wasn't expecting you to arrive looking so dignified." He chuckled, loud enough to draw glances. I forced a smile. "Yeah, well, it's a big night." I tapped the tablecloth. He smirked and turned back to his phone. I glanced across the table at her parents. Her mother's eyes flicked to me, then away. Again, like I was a name to be acknowledged, but not spoken to. Her father wore a suit and spoke loudly about some business transaction I couldn't follow. Why were they even here? Anniversaries were supposed to be private, just the two of us. Maybe a bottle of wine, maybe a moment to remember why we made a lifelong vow. But this felt like a performance. I shifted in my seat, my fingers brushing the small box in my jacket pocket. A gift. Something I'd planned for weeks, hoping it would mean as much to her as it did to me. I'd carried it all day, imagining how I'd give it to her, how her eyes would meet mine, soften. But now, she was still at the far end, her hands animated, her laughter bright and effortless, like I wasn't even there. I tried to get her attention, but she was deep in a story, surrounded by people who hung on her every word. I tore a piece of bread, but didn't eat. I thought of the last time we went out, just the two of us. She'd been on her phone most of the night, laughing at messages I wasn't part of. I told myself it was just a phase, her schedule. Life. But tonight, with her parents, tight grins, her cousin's smirks, and the widening space between us, the doubt began to win. I looked at my watch. 7:05, dinner was beginning, and I already felt spent. Still, I stayed seated, my fingertips brushing the box in my pocket, reminding myself to be patient. She had called it a surprise. She'd planned this. Maybe this was her way of reminding me she still cared. The noise grew louder. The lights dimmed, and I forced myself to breathe, to wait. I watched her, hoping for a glance, any sign that I wasn't invisible. But the night dragged on, and I sat, torn between hope and the sobering truth that maybe I was the only one still holding on. The box in my pocket felt heavier by the minute. So did the table. The servers cut through the crowd with dishes. I barely touched my plate, a few grilled shrimp. Bit of something green. My hunger had vanished. All I could see was her, laughing from across the table, her hands dancing as she spoke. She had always been lovely, but tonight, I felt like she was performing for everyone except me. I ran my fingers over the box's smooth wood. Inside was a letter. Words I'd spent many nights stitching together. Things I couldn't say out loud. Next to it, a trust account document. 17. $1,500. Saved slowly, piece by piece, to show her I still believed in the life we once dreamed of. A house by the sea, a trip, a beginning. I thought I'd give it to her after dessert when the table quieted, when it felt like the right moment. But now? I wasn't sure. Her mother whispered to someone in red, eyes flicking to me every few seconds, as if checking a list of my flaws. Once, our eyes met. She smiled, but not with her eyes. It was the kind of smile that tells you you've already lost, and you didn't even know you were playing. I looked away, my hand still on the box. I remembered carving it, sanding cedar smooth, engraving our initials at the bottom where no one else would see. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, something I made. I thought she'd understand. Laughter erupted from the table. Her cousin raised a glass. I tried to smile, to look like I was part of the journey they had taken without me. But my mind drifted back to the letter, to late nights, to whispered dreams, to her head on my shoulder. I had promised in that letter to keep choosing her. But now, I wasn't sure if she wanted to be chosen. I sipped water, cold against my lips. Maybe she planned this because she cared. Maybe this was love, just in a language I didn't speak. Her father's booming voice snapped me out of thought. He was telling a story, hands slicing the air like a conductor. He looked at her. I looked at her, and waited. She whispered something to the woman beside her. Both of them chuckled. I was merely walking through the room, a guest in her world. I set the glass down, held the box again. It was still early. There was still time. Maybe. The main course came. Roasted vegetables, grilled beef, all presented with flair, but I barely noticed. I was watching her raise her glass, and then she tapped her spoon to it. A chime. The room silenced. She stood. "With 5 years of experience," she began, "I'm confident enough to fill a room without even trying." Laughter. My heart thudded. 5 years of growth and learning. Her voice was light, sure, effortless. She swept the room with her gaze, but didn't touch me, didn't look my way. "And now," she said, grinning, "I'm proud to say, I'm free, single, and looking." I blinked. Did I hear her right? Free, single. My chest locked up, my breath caught. I waited for a punchline, an explanation, anything. Her father laughed, loud and open, clapping. Her mother raised her glass, eyes shining. Someone else clapped too. A harsh, jarring sound, and then silence. That awful, crooked silence where everyone's watching, but no one says a word.